The events and incidents that we're going to be talking about in this video are things that you will never hear on the 7 o'clock news. And it is certainly not a subject the Ministry of Agriculture would want to discuss. It is one of those quiet scars on Jamaica's history. The sort of secret people whisper about. Older farmers remember, but the official records barely mention.
We lost so much that day.
You see, there are some stories in this country that were never written down, never investigated, and never carried on the front page of the Gleaner. But they still live quietly in the memories of the older people who saw them with their own eyes. And every now and then, one of these stories resurfaces. And when you listen to it closely, you begin to realize that Jamaica had far more happening behind the scenes than anyone was ever willing to admit. This is one of those stories, one that begins with an ordinary morning in rural Jamaica and ends with one of the most mysterious environmental disasters in our history, connected to the Cold War, CIA operations, and a chemical so deadly that it changed entire ecosystems across the world. Before we had cell phones, before every strange moment could be recorded, before rural people had any kind of voice outside their district, something happened here. Something that came out of the sky. People in St. Mary, Portland, and St. Thomas still talk about the mornings when the air would start vibrating before the plane even reached over the treetops. They said the sound didn't just pass through the sky, you could feel it in your chest, rumbling through the house, shaking pots on zinc counters. And by the time you step outside, one small aircraft was already sweeping low over the coconut trees, flying far lower than any commercial plane should fly. And behind it, a mist, a strange brownish spray drifting onto rooftops, into yards, onto crops, into drinking water, onto the people themselves. No one announced it. No one explained it. No one admitted to ever ordering it. Yet, the planes kept coming. And then, almost like a curse spreading through the land, the coconut trees began to die. Today we are going deep into a story many Jamaicans remember, but very few understand. A story buried under Cold War politics, environmental silence, and unanswered questions. This is the secret spraying, Jamaica's forgotten chemical mystery. Now, to understand what may have happened, we have to go back to Jamaica in the early 1970s. The country was in a political storm. Prime Minister Michael Manley was strengthening ties with Cuba. The Cold War was in full swing, and the United States was watching Jamaica closely. This isn't conspiracy, it's documented. The 1975 Church Committee in the US Senate confirmed that the CIA was active in Jamaica, running operations aimed at, quote, countering foreign influence, end quote, and, quote, maintaining strategic interests, end quote. At the same time, the US was experimenting with herbicides around the world, including compounds similar to the infamous Agent Orange, the same chemical used in Vietnam. So the climate was tense, Jamaica was important, and foreign agencies were definitely here. But how does that connect to coconut trees? Farmers in Portland, St. Mary, and St. Thomas began noticing something strange. Low-flying aircraft, the type nobody in the rural districts could identify, passing slowly over coconut fields. Some farmers described it as a white mist, others as a brown spray, drifting downward like fog. A few days later, the leaves of the coconut trees turned yellow, then brown. Then the entire crown collapsed. Coconut trees don't die that fast naturally. Not at that scale. Not across 3 parishes at once. People in the countryside talked, but nothing made the news. Back then, rural Jamaicans didn't have social media. If something strange happened, it stayed in the mountains, in the valleys, in the farming districts, and it was whispered, not reported. But guess what? The damage was real. The Jamaica Coconut Industry Board recorded severe declines in production from the early to mid 1970s, and this part is historical fact. Now, here's where the story gets even deeper. In 1979, the US Government Accountability Office released a report confirming that the US military had conducted herbicide tests outside of Vietnam. And these countries included Panama, Puerto Rico, Thailand, Canada, Hawaii, Korea, and quote, unspecified Caribbean locations, end quote. Then in 2006, the US Army released a second document titled Herbicide Tests and Storage Outside of Vietnam. That report again mentioned Caribbean Basin test sites, but still refused to name the specific countries. So this is what we know for a fact so far. The US was conducting chemical spraying tests in the Caribbean. At the same time, Jamaica's coconut trees were dying. And at that very same time, farmers reported low-flying aircraft. Now, does this prove Jamaica was sprayed? No. But it proves the possibility is not far-fetched. Now, when most Jamaicans hear about Agent Orange, they think of Vietnam, not the Caribbean. But we need to understand what it actually was. Agent Orange was a mixture of two herbicides, 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. The problem came from a deadly contaminant that is formed during the manufacturing, dioxin. And dioxin is one of the most toxic chemicals ever created. This chemical stays in soil for decades, causes rapid plant death, burns human skin, causes miscarriages, cancers, and deformities, and can also kill entire ecosystems. Now, when you compare that to the symptoms seen in Jamaica's coconut trees, the match is unsettling. Again, not proof. But the scientific similarity is striking. Now, in the official narrative, authorities claimed that paraquat was the herbicide used. However, a closer scientific analysis reveals significant differences. Paraquat, chemically known as 1,1-dimethyl-4,4-bipridinium, is a bipyridal herbicide that acts by causing rapid destruction to plant cells through oxidative damage. Its molecular formula is C-12H-14N-2Cl-2, and it is known for its acute toxicity, requiring careful handling. In contrast, Agent Orange was a blend of two herbicides, 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. Guys, you can research the word for the D and the T. I can't pronounce them, so that's why they're not in the video. See it? We can't put them on the screen still. The latter, during its production, became contaminated with dioxin, a highly toxic compound that causes long-term environmental and health issues. Agent Orange's chemical composition and its intended aerial application differ fundamentally from Paraquat's characteristics. Therefore, understanding these chemical distinctions makes it evident that Paraquat's application from an aircraft would be both impractical and fundamentally inconsistent with its known properties. Paraquat is highly corrosive and poses a significant risk of immediate toxicity upon contact, which makes aerial spraying not only inefficient but also extremely hazardous to the applicators and the environment. On the other hand, Agent Orange was specifically formulated for aerial application. Its composition of 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T and the resulting dioxin contamination made it possible to be dispersed from aircraft in large volumes, covering extensive areas with minimal risk to the operators. This method was essential for strategic defoliation programs during the Vietnam War. Hence, the distinct chemical profiles and intended applications of these herbicides underscore why Paraquat would not be feasible for aerial dispersal. This distinction allows us to confidently conclude that the substance sprayed over Jamaica was not Paraquat, but rather something more aligned with the properties of Agent Orange. I know if you ask the elders in rural Portland or St. Mary, they will tell you they remember the smell, they remember animals getting sick, they remember babies born with health issues around the same time. They remember being told not to drink the river water today. Some of them still have scars from burns they couldn't explain. No soil tests were done. No environmental analysis. No toxicology. No investigation. Why? Because in the 1970s, Jamaica had no environmental protection agency, no chemical testing labs, no system to report agricultural poisoning. If something happened, it stayed hidden. Not by conspiracy, but simply because Jamaica didn't have the tools to uncover the truth. Now, let's put all the confirmed facts on the table. Jamaica's coconut trees suffered a catastrophic and unexplained die-off. Farmers reported aerial spraying around the same time. The CIA was active in Jamaica during that exact period, and this is confirmed by US Senate reports. The US was conducting herbicide tests in the Caribbean basin in the 1970s. The symptoms mirror known herbicide exposure damage. No Jamaican agency ever provided a scientific explanation. None of these points alone prove anything, but together they form a pattern too strong to ignore. And this is what investigative journalism looks like. not making claims, but examining evidence that refuses to be buried. So you might ask, why would Jamaica be targeted? And that's a very good question. Now, there are two major theories. One, testing grounds. Jamaica's climate, vegetation, and the terrain closely resemble other countries where the US was conducting herbicide evaluation. Testing here would have provided useful data. Two, Cold War strategy. Now, during Manley's era, Jamaica aligned with Cuba. US Jamaica relations were strained. The CIA actively worked against left leaning Caribbean governments. So, would herbicide operations fit into that? Possibly. The US did similar things in Latin America. That's historical fact. But again, Jamaica is not named in any declassified documents. Only Caribbean basin sites are mentioned. Could Jamaica be one of them? Maybe. But until more documents are released, we cannot say for sure. So, what really happened? Here's the truth. I do not have proof that Agent Orange was sprayed in Jamaica. No official record says that. And as a responsible researcher, I cannot claim it as a fact. But we do have enough evidence to say this. Jamaica experienced a major environmental event in the 1970s that has never been explained. And the US herbicide programs of the era provide possible and concerning context. This video is not about accusing. It's about asking the questions Jamaica was never allowed to ask. Questions like, why did our coconut trees die? Why were planes flying low? Why were toxic herbicides being tested in the Caribbean at the same time? Why were these programs secret? And why has no government, US or Jamaican, ever tried to answer any of these questions? Hey, but you know what? Sometimes the loudest answer is the question that never gets answered. And Jamaica deserves answers, not rumors, not whispers, not 30 or 40-year-old memories barely surviving in the hills. We deserve the truth. And until those documents are released, until those archives are opened, this mystery will remain one of the Caribbean's quietest and the most unsettling Cold War secrets. This has been Elite Jamaica. I am Alex, uncovering the untold history they never wanted us to question. If you found this video interesting or informative, then you can give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed to Elite Jamaica, consider doing so or do it right now. And until we meet here again on Elite Jamaica, I just want to say blessings to you. Thank you for watching. Y'all stay safe. Wow, good.